Hi there. It's another Sunday. Nice to be with you today on the Way Show. My name is Wole, and it's been a lovely week, I must say. Um, I hope it's been lovely for you too. I hope you've been keeping safe at this time during the COVID. If so, sit back. Today we've got someone, and today really we're going to be talking football, just football. And I've got someone you probably would know. I'm sure if you're a lover of football, you watch Match of the Day on BBC, and you probably watch Super Sports if you're outside the shores of the UK. You probably know who I'm talking about today. I'm so glad, I'm so excited to welcome Damian Johnson, who is a broadcaster, a football journalist, all the way in Sheffield. Damian, thank you for joining us today. It's so nice to see you again after all. A long time. It's been a long time we saw each other now.
That's right. Yeah, great to be here, Wally. Yeah, I think the last time we were just discussing off air, weren't we? The last time we saw each other was probably the African nations back in maybe 2004, 2006. Can't remember if it was Tunisia or Egypt, one of those two places. Yeah, it's a long time.
It is a long time. Yeah, I was in Tunisia at that time. And I remember back in the days. Yeah. So nice to see you again, Damian. So tell us, Damian, what have you been up to? I mean, I always delighted all the time to hear you report from stadiums around the UK, especially Premiership, presenting a match of the day, football focus, and all that. So what have you been up to about this one?
Well, mainly these days I'm reporting on games and doing features on games for Premier League Productions. It's a branch of the Premier League, their own broadcasting arm, and we go out to I think 200 and odd countries around the world. People are mad for football, aren't they? Everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm covering a lot of the teams in the north of England. So Sheffield United is local to where I live, but I also go to Manchester United, Man City, Everton, Liverpool, Burnley, Leicester. Wherever they send me, really, wherever there's football, I tend to get sent. So yeah, it's not a bad job.
Definitely not a bad job. Always delighted. Always nice to talk about football because it's more of like not being a job or something you love doing. Tell me, Damian. Today we were just before we started this game when I was watching Sheffield Spurs game today. Obviously ended 3-1 to Spurs. My daughter and I were watching the game together. I'm thinking, Damian's going to be at this game today. And of course, you were there at the game today. What's going on with Sheffield this season?
Well, that's a big question. They were fantastic, weren't they, last year? They took everyone by surprise, came up and played this fantastic new innovative system with three at the back and the centre-backs overlapping and getting forward and creating the other end of the pitch. But this year, it all seems to have gone wrong, turned sour. And I think they're all scratching their heads as to what the problem is. I think a big factor is that they've lost Jack O'Connell, who was kind of unknown, really, when he started playing in the Premier League last season for Sheffield United. But he was key to the way that defensive system operated. The ball came in the box and he'd head it clear. Equally, he'd pop up at the other end of the pitch, creating things. But he's suffered a bad knee injury, and the word is he's going to be out probably for the rest of the season, although there is some suggestion he might come back early. And they just started, they finished last season, if you remember, losing games. They've carried that into this season. And what was it, 17 or so games they went without a win until last week. They got that win against Newcastle. They thought they'd turned the corner, and then they have to face Tottenham, who are, returning to form and obviously challenging for the title. So, I think they're really struggling badly at the bottom of the table now.
Tell me, could you also say maybe the fact that they've lost Dean Henderson back to Man United's parent club, Man United, could that be a factor also? Because Dean was magnificent for them last season.
It was, yeah. I interviewed him a few times, and you could tell he had a real presence about him. And I'm sure that transferred onto the pitch, that he just calmed everyone around him because they knew, the defenders knew that he was at the back, and if they were beaten, they were pretty sure that the goalkeeper wasn't going to be beaten by the opposing strikers. They've got Aaron Ramsdale in, who is a former Sheffield United player, went to Bournemouth, came back for quite a big fee. And of course, with the defence in front of him not being as good as it was last season, he's having to deal with a lot more shots. And quite a few of those are going in the net, unfortunately. Certainly Dean Henderson is a big loss, and he's battling for a place now to start for Manchester United with David De Gea, isn't he?
Oh yeah, and that's going to be one being asked, displacing David De Gea at the moment. And obviously, Sheffield have also been struggling scoring goals. Dixie Goldrick has been, well, I've seen popping up important goals. He scored against Chelsea, obviously in that defeat at Stamford Bridge. Scored today against Spurs, and but still, it's not been enough for them, especially scoring goals.
No, he's not. He's not really an out-and-out goal scorer, McGoldrick. He's a creator as well, and he's never been prolific in terms of scoring goals. And he's got a mixture of players there, and he sort of mixes and matches them. There's Oliver Burke, who's come in he's come from West Brom, really pacey, but he's yet to score in the Premier League. Ryan Brewster's come from Liverpool, highly thought of there. They've paid big money for him. He's not scored yet. And he's still only a young kid. Billy Sharp's there, but he's about 35 now. He's a sort of a Blades fan, a Sheffield United fan who probably coming to the end of his career. So he's struggling to find the right mix. Lys Mousset, who's got great promise, but he's had a few problems off the pitch. Never seems to be fully fit, but he's got great potential. So yeah, you're right. They can't score goals, and if you can't score goals and you can't defend at the other end, you're going to be in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah. And before we go on Sheffield, I'm going to ask this question. Obviously, my daughter said to me to ask you this question. And are you a Blades fan or a Wednesday fan?
No, I'm not. I'm a fan of neither, actually. My team, I was born in Hull. My father was Nigerian. And my mother was English, and he went to work in Hull, so that's where me and my brothers and sister grew up. So Hull is my team, but don't tell anyone.
I'm not saying nothing about that. Well, obviously we're going to talk about your Nigerian connection much later in the program. Spurs, surprising when they announced you put Jose Mourinho to be the manager, and no one actually thought that was going to be a perfect, combination. I mean, Levy and Mourinho work in the same place. Oh my God! So but he's been doing well. I mean, last season he managed to steer them to a respective position, and they're playing Europa League. This season they started well. Well, had a fumble, and slowly they're beginning to come back. Where do you see Spurs this season, especially with Mourinho there?
Well, I think it's taken a while to win over the Tottenham fans. I think they were a bit sceptical. They loved Pochettino, didn't they? But he went. Levy thought that Mourinho was the best option. He's a board winner, although in recent seasons he's not had the sort of huge success that he had earlier in his career. So people perhaps started to doubt him. But you can't really doubt his track record. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, he's achieved everywhere he's managed, and that's in all the big leagues. So yeah, he took a while to win the fans over. He's got a reputation as being quite a defensive coach, hasn't he? But I think equally you have to look at the teams he's managed, and I think he's a practical manager. I think he looks at the players he's got at his disposal, and he plays in a fashion that suits them. So at Real Madrid, they were very attacking. They had Ronaldo, which obviously helps. Manchester United, it wasn't a success, although he did win trophies, didn't he, while he was there? I think he's won over the Spurs fans, and they can see what he's trying to do. He's made some very astute signings in the likes of Højbjerg, Reguilon, and they were impressive today. They played well. They scored 3 very good goals, certainly 2 very good goals. I don't know if you've seen the goal that Ndombele scored.
Ndombele, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic improvised little flick over the goalkeeper's head. The other 2 were poor goals from Sheffield United's point of view, but Tottenham took full advantage, and that's what Mourinho teams do. They take full advantage. If there's any weakness in the opposition, Mourinho's great at exploiting it, and he exploited them with a set piece, a header from Aurier, and then they lost the ball in midfield, and Kane powered away and drilled one in the corner. And then later on, as I say, Ndombele got his goal, and it was a really good professional away performance, and they're going well. I think before tonight's fixture or today's fixtures, they were up to 3rd. So, they're challengers, although they probably wouldn't say that themselves. They're keeping it on the down low.
if there's anything Mourinho has probably done with their Spurs this season, is that he scored incredible goals. Sonny's goal against Burnley last season obviously won the Puskas Award. Harry Kane's goal, the last game they played, the regular cross and the header, brilliant. The Dombele's today was world class.
Yeah.
Can that be taught to score world class goal by any manager?
I don't think so. I think most managers will agree that players of real talent, you've got to guide them, but you've got to let them go out and play. And I mean, Son and Kane are probably the most exciting partnership in the Premier League at the moment, aren't they? They've got 35 goals between them. And they, it's really exciting. Even as a neutral, I mean, I go to do a job and to watch the game. I'm privileged because there's only about 300 people in the stadium at the moment because of COVID. And it's a real privilege to be able to watch these guys up close. And it's also a bit of an insight because there's no crowd noise. You can hear what the managers are shouting and how they're behaving because, they're very close by and there's no one else making a noise. There's no fans in there to sort of prevent you hearing what's going on. And it's quite instructive just to watch how the managers behave and to actually hear what they're saying and the instructions they're barking out. And Mourinho certainly today was very, very vocal, and you could hear him and you could sense his passion. And it works, it's a combination that works. He's got very good players. He's a vastly experienced manager, and they're on a very good path at the moment.
And Gareth Bale, I mean, we cannot talk about Spurs without mentioning Gareth Bale. His one of his Madrid career was just more like sitting on the bench all the while. Zidane didn't rate him. He came to Spurs, and everyone was already raving that the front three of Spurs is going to be like just straight up, compared to probably what Liverpool has got at the moment. But Bale is just sitting on the bench again. Are we seeing the end of Gareth Bale in football? Probably concentrate more on golf. What have you?
Well, I'd hesitate to say that because he's been such a fantastic player, hasn't he? And yes, he just seemed to fall out of favour. Zidane didn't really fancy him at Madrid for whatever reason. Perhaps he didn't fit into his system. And you would have thought that he would walk into the Tottenham side, given his reputation and his track record. But for whatever reason, Mourinho was happy with what he's got. He stayed on the bench today. I don't think he got on in the end. And but I guess he didn't need him. They were 3-1 up. They were pretty comfortable by that stage. And when he was making changes, they tended to be. Although Lucas Moura came on, he might have thrown Bale on instead of Lucas Moura, but he decided that Lucas Moura was the man he wanted to go on and just cement the result. So yeah, it's a very interesting question where Bale goes next. I don't think he seems to have a future at Real Madrid. In England, could he go to a lesser club? Well, he could, but could they afford him? I don't know. These are questions that a lot of people will be asking and wondering. And I'm sure Tottenham fans would love to see him back in the team regularly because he did great things, didn't he, in his first spell there? And they'll have watched enviously at what he did at Real Madrid and thought, well, it's a shame he's not doing that for us here at Tottenham. So whether he gets a chance further down the road, we have to wait and see.
And talking about future, Dele Alli, a brilliant player, Milton Keynes, Spurs, probably one of the first names on the team sheet when Pochettino was there. Mourinho came. What's going on with Dele? Do you see him leaving Spurs, going to PSG probably?
Yeah, well, again, it was a big talking point among the people at the game today when they saw that his name wasn't even in the squad. You'd have expected at least to see him on the bench because he played in the cup, didn't he, a week or two ago? But yeah, I mean, it would seem an obvious fit for him to follow Pochettino to PSG. At this stage, I guess it's speculation. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, fabulous player. Would be a great addition to most sides, but at Tottenham, not at the moment.
So the big game today, the Northwest Derby, Man United and Liverpool 0-0 ended. That's the third 0-0, I think, if I'm right, that Liverpool's going to have this season back to back, not scoring. What's
That's
going
right.
on with Firmino, Salah, Mane not being able to score goals in that
Mm.
Liverpool team? That's depressing, so to say. What's
Well,
going
it
on
is,
there?
yeah. It's 3 games in a row that they've not scored, and you really scratch your head wondering what's going on, because they were untouchable, weren't they, last season?
Yeah,
The three of them were just so exciting to watch, scoring goals just for fun, and Liverpool romped away with the title in the end, and deservedly so. This year, I don't know whether it's fatigue. Is it perhaps we can? It's all speculation, isn't it? But we could speculate that there was a very short pre-season, short break in between the seasons, and it's been pretty intense, hasn't it, for Liverpool over the last couple of seasons? And the way Klopp plays, he drives his players very hard. Is there a little bit of fatigue setting in? Games are compressed. The season is the way it is because the games have to be crammed in. That's just the way football is at the moment because of COVID. Um, Perhaps there's some fatigue. He plays pretty much the same three every week.
mm,
Jota is injured, so he would be an option normally, but he's out of the picture at the moment. But yeah, it's curious. It's curious. But they're still up there, aren't they? They're not far off the pace, and I'm sure they will be involved in the shake-up at the end of the season.
well, if there's any positive from today, it probably would be the defensive pairing of Jordan Henderson and Fabinho. They were like magnificent against Martial and all those people, Rashford, Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you see Jordan Henderson probably winding up his career towards the end of the career being a central defender instead of a midfielder?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That a lot of players who play sort of defensive midfield, often commentators and the rest of us, we all talk about, well, perhaps he might one day be a central defender. But I'm thinking back, there aren't that many who actually make that switch in reality, are there?
Yeah,
People used to say about Patrick Vieira, he'll end up being a central defender. Played the whole of his career in midfield, really. Steven
mm,
Gerrard was another one. He dropped deeper, but I don't think he ever became a regular centre back, did he? Um,
mm,
but yeah, it is an option. Certainly in midfield, Henderson's got his work cut out to get a regular start, hasn't he? Because they've got Thiago, they've got Wijnaldum if he sticks around,
yeah.
Curtis Jones, who I know is very popular with the manager, rates him very highly. And who knows what they do in the transfer market. Henderson's Liverpool through and through. He absolutely loves the club, and I think if it meant getting a game, he'd play anywhere because that's the love he's got for the club and the dedication he's got to the game.
Should they have signed Timo Werner from Leipzig instead of Chelsea?
Well, I'm not privy to the ins and outs of that particular story, but I think they've got so many attacking options. Jota is a really interesting addition. Werner, I don't know whether it was a done deal and he was always going to Chelsea or not, but I know it was talked about for a long time, and I think it was I suspect it was a deal that was sewn up a long time ago, and Liverpool probably weren't in the race genuinely, but I may be wrong.
Hmm. And obviously, there's no way we cannot talk about Chelsea. Frank has had some sticks in the past few weeks, dropping points and what have you. And obviously, his new signings, Kai Havertz and Timo, are not really up to scratch at the moment because they're not delivering the goods, so to say.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an
Yeah,
interesting one
yeah,
because just a few short weeks ago, he was being talked about as as the saviour, and
yeah,
he'd made very astute signings, and they'd all hit the ground running, and they had competition for places, and they were going, they were going somewhere. But in a very short space of time, results start going against you, and that's how football is, isn't it? It can change very quickly. I'm not sure he's under pressure genuinely, because Chelsea fans absolutely adore Frank Lampard, and the owners perhaps have a reputation for changing managers. I think Lampard is probably in a quite special position given his track record and his history with the club. So I would suspect that he's perhaps safer than some of us are speculating. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Okay. All right. We'll see how that goes. And obviously, the big news outside that, Derby County uh, um, contracting Wayne Rooney as a permanent
Mm.
manager. That switch was spectacular. I mean, we knew Wayne would probably be a manager down the line, but would you say this is too sudden? This is coming too soon?
Yeah, it's come sooner than I perhaps expected. From the outside looking in, I imagined that Derby would get a new manager and Wayne would continue his education in coaching and learning the ropes from whoever that new manager was. But obviously, Derby have decided that, after his stellar career, and it was what a playing career it was, amazing for
Oh,
both
wow.
England and Manchester United, and before that and after that Everton.
Mhm.
Um, that he was the man that they wanted. They must have seen something in him that suggested he had a future in management. I know he's always been keen to do it, and he's learned from some of the best, hasn't he? With Fergie and David Moyes and people like that. So yeah, he's in there now, and I saw that they lost the first game with him in charge as permanent manager
Yeah.
yesterday. But that's just the way it goes, and I think at least Derby will get huge attention now from week to week. People will be fascinated to see how he does, and I wouldn't back against him, to be honest. I think he so loves the game, and he's so immersed in the game that I think rather like Gerrard, who's doing good things at Rangers, I think he might. I think he might be around for a while.
Frank Lampard from Derby County, Chelsea great to Chelsea. Wayne
Hmm.
Rooney from Derby County, Man United great to Man United, probably.
I can see where you're going with this. Yeah, yeah. Well, you never know. It's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, top players
Yeah.
don't always make top managers, do they? If
Mm,
you look at the great managers of recent years in the Premier League, Wenger, Ferguson,
yeah.
Mourinho weren't, by their own admission, not me saying this, by their own admission, weren't great players. They played,
Mm,
but to varying degrees of success. And we've seen so many in the past who've come in with stellar careers, going way back to Bobby Charlton, who tried
yeah.
his hand at management and decided very quickly it wasn't for him. More recently, you've got people like Roy Keane, Gary Neville.
I never,
Um,
yeah.
they've had mixed success. Um, so yeah, there are certain players who you look at and you think, yeah, I think they could be great managers. And perhaps Rooney's one of them. We'll just have to wait and see. It's like all of these things; you need a bit of patience and just let them make their way and see what happens. It's going to be fascinating.
It's going to be fascinating. Listen, Damien, we're just going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we zero in on some of the Nigerian footballers that play in the Premier League and obviously the Championship, and obviously give you assessments about that. So we're going to take a quick
Sure.
break and come back and discuss that.
Okay, sure.
Welcome back. It's still the Way Show, and my name is still Wole, and I've got Damian Johnson with me. We've been discussing the Premier League for the past close to about half an hour now. So we before we went on the break, we said we were going to talk about Nigerian footballers in the Premier League and obviously Championship, and have a look at the performance so far this season. Damien, so far, Nigerian players, who's caught your eye since the beginning of the season?
I think I'd say probably two people. Alex Iwobi at Everton, who has got great Nigerian pedigree. His uncle is JJ Okocha, as you know. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he's enjoying life under Carlo Ancelotti, and Everton doing well. One of the surprises of the season. I think a lot of people have been taken by surprise at how well they're doing and the attractive football they're playing. They've got some really good players in there, and he's doing well to hold down a place with the likes of James Rodriguez and Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's burst onto the scene in a big way this season, scoring goals. So yeah, he's caught the eye, and he's loving life, as I say, under the tutorship of Carlo Ancelotti. He's being asked to play in two different positions, sometimes as a wing back, which is a really exhausting position to play if you're used to being a fullback or a winger. You have to do two jobs in one, and you have to get up and down, and really quite physically demanding to do that. But he's quite an adaptable lad. He's pitched in with a couple of goals this season, and I did quite an interesting interview with him a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, talking about how he used to go and watch JJ playing for Bolton Wanderers all those years ago. Do you remember?
Wow.
And under Sam Allardyce, and all his tricks and feints and goals. And he was terrific to watch. Alex is a different kind of player to his uncle, but very athletic. A bit of an eye for goal. Likes to go past a player and cross the ball for others. A creator, I suppose, more than a goal scorer. And it's nice to see him holding down a position in what is a very good Everton squad.
It is.
The other one that comes to mind, I was going to say, is Hakim Adelarkin, who was on loan recently at Hull in League One. He's actually gone back to his parent club, Bristol City now, but he caught the eye on loan. And as a Hull fan, rather disappointed to see him go back. But I'll keep an eye on how he gets on at Bristol City now.
Definitely. Alex Iwobi was at Arsenal, and I'm sure he actually enjoyed his time at Arsenal, because I saw some of his interviews on Arsenal Fan TV when he was at Arsenal. It didn't quite work out well for him there. Do you think he has not picked up the pieces of what Alex Iwobi should be after the misadventure at Arsenal? And do you think he's going to achieve that potential that he has actually got to succeed and probably be an African Player of the Year at some point?
Well, you would hope so. He's got all the attributes, and he went to Everton for big money. I think it was about £25 million. So he's got a price on his head, hasn't he? Which brings a little bit of pressure. And he's in a good team, and if you're surrounded by good players and you have talent yourself, I guess the onus is on you really to take your opportunity. And I think if you talk to Ian Wright, for example, would say that this is an opportunity really to fulfil his potential, and maybe he's under pressure to do that now, because it kind of ended a little bit sourly at Arsenal. He didn't really play up to his potential all the time. He was inconsistent, and he needs to build some inconsistency, I guess, now into his game. Be playing regularly and impressing regularly to keep getting in the team. But yeah, he's got all the skills. He's got pace. He's got an eye for a pass. Perhaps needs to add more goals to his game. I know he's not an out-and-out goal scorer anyway, but it always helps your CV and the way you appreciate it if you can pitch him with some goals as a forward-thinking player. So perhaps that's something he's got to work on. I think he'd admit that himself. So yeah, one certainly to watch, and good to see a Nigerian boy doing well in the Premier League.
Exactly, and obviously, indeed, Leicester, it's been probably one of the best defensive midfielder in the country since he came in from Belgium. He's been doing exceptionally well, and his other partner in the Nigerian teammate in Leicester, Ian Ochoa, has been like off and on really. Went to Man City. People thought he was going to be the next big thing out of Nigeria, but it never really worked out well for him. And went to Leicester. Now, obviously, he's got Jamie Vardy there, who is a brilliant striker. What's the next point of call for him? What should he do now? I mean, he's not getting the games really Jamie Vardy's
Yeah.
not going anywhere soon.
Well, I think Jamie Vardy turned 34, did he, the other day? So
Yeah.
Vardy's not going to be around forever. So I think Iheanacho's kind of got a decision to make, whether he sticks around and works at his game and convinces the manager that, you know, he is the man to take over the mantle when Vardy eventually retires. But as you say, Vardy doesn't appear to be aging. I mean, he's as quick as ever, it would seem, still outrunning defenders and scoring terrific goals. I think it's helped Vardy that he's not playing international football anymore, so he can concentrate just on Leicester, and that's probably prolonging his career. But that's no good for Iheanacho, is it? Because he's probably thinking, get out of the way, Jamie. It's my turn. I'm a young man. I'm the young buck, and I've got potential, and I want to show the manager what I can do. But yeah, he came. He was a big money signing, a big name as well. He didn't quite make the grade at Chelsea, but that's no reflection on him necessarily. It's very hard to make the breakthrough, as a lot of players have found at Chelsea. But he's at a good club, and if he can convince the manager that he's worth a start, he's got to see it, I guess, as an opportunity. With Ndidi, I would say that he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the country, and probably the first name on Brendan Rodgers' team sheet. He's got lots of flair players around him, but he just anchors that midfield, links defence and attack, plays the simple pass to players who can do more on the ball, the likes of Tielemans and Barnes and Vardy. But yeah, he's an absolutely key player, and he's come good. He's been a really good signing for Leicester, no doubt about that.
And there's this giant of the man that plays for West Bromwich Albion at the moment, for Sam Allardyce, Big Sam. Semi Ajayi, who's the defender, popped in, scored a goal yesterday for them when they played Wolves.
That's right.
2-3 goals now, and I was looking at the chat recently. For the first Premier League and obviously Championship, he seems to be the highest goal scoring central defender over 2-3 seasons now. And people rarely talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, you're right to say he's a huge man, isn't he? He's a big, dominating figure, and it does you no harm at all to be a central defender who scores goals, because defenders are judged, aren't they, on keeping the ball out of the net, and obviously that's important. You've got to get your blocks and your tackles and your headers in. But if you can pitch in with 2, 3, 4, 5 goals a season, that's when you become a really outstanding central defender. If you can do the defensive bit as well. And the best central defenders tend to be those who pitch in with their share of goals, because, 4 or 5 goals a season as a central defender, as long as the people further ahead of you are scoring their share as well, your team's going to finish in a decent position. And that he's going to be key to West Brom's hopes of surviving. They're in a real scrap down at the bottom, aren't they? And what a result it was against Wolves. Big local derby, and he played his part, the big man, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And obviously, there's this other player that I've been following quite recently. Originating from his parent club in Liverpool, but plays for Union Berlin at the moment in the Bundesliga. That's Taiwo Awoniyi. People were saying he's probably going to be the next Origi. Obviously, probably better than Origi, but he's not been able to fulfill his potentials where he was last season with Mainz, and obviously went to Union. And so far in Union, he's been scoring goals for them. Union are 4th in the Bundesliga at the moment. Do you see him coming back to the Premier League? Obviously playing in Liverpool at some point in his career, probably sooner, probably later.
Well, he's still relatively young, isn't he? And I think, unlike some leagues, I think Premier League managers probably look at people who have had success in Germany, and they will say, yeah, that person scoring goals or performing well in that league is the real deal. So I think he's still got a chance at Liverpool, certainly. The standards are so high, aren't they? You have to be really outstanding to make your mark at a big Premier League club. And I think he's got to use this as an education. He's at a team, as you say, that's challenging for Europe, and that people will notice that. That kind of thing doesn't go unnoticed. And Klopp, being German, will keep a close eye on the Bundesliga anyway, just because of it's his league, it's where he's come from, it's where he's played and managed. And he make no mistake, he will have noticed that this guy is pulling up a few trees in the Bundesliga, which is, one of Europe's great leagues. And yeah, it can't do him any harm at all, I would have said. And, it would be great to get him back at Liverpool, wouldn't it? And get another Nigerian doing well for a big club.
It would be definitely be great about that. The Nigerian Super Eagles. Have you been impressed with what's been going on? The last game, obviously, was dreadful, 4-0 against the Sierra Leonean. Well, mediocre Sierra Leonean team, for as it were, but 4-0 first half, 4-4 at the end of the game. Then went back to Sierra Leone, 0-0. Despite all those players we've got, I mean, Nigeria's got a array of talent. Have you been impressed so far with, well, first the Nigerian team, and obviously the Nigerian manager, the Franco-German Gerard Rohr?
Well, I've not seen a lot of them, to be honest, but they have got a terrific pool of players to pick from now, all operating at top level in big leagues around the world. And they're not really the sum of their parts, are they? It's a little bit like the old days with Nigeria, in the days of Okocha and Kanu and company. You never knew what you're going to get, really. And I think that we've kind of fallen back into that. I don't know whether the players aren't keen on, representing their country as much as they used to be. Is there still the same pride in the shirt? I'm not sure. You would have to ask them. But with this pool of talent, I think they should be doing better, really, more consistently, and challenging, for the African nations and for World Cup qualification.
Do you think Nigeria? I know you've not watched Nigeria a lot this in the past few months, years, but do you see Nigeria really qualifying for the World Cup again? And do you see an African country winning the World Cup at some point in our life?
Well, it was about 40 years ago that Pele said an African team would win by the end of the century. I think, or something. I forget the quote precisely, but I think there are so many good African footballers out there that it's just a case of, I would have thought, getting the right coach and management in place just to pull it all together and to get players proud of playing for their countries again. I think international football across the world really has become less important because everything's about league football. It's about, certainly in England in the Premier League, international football seems to have dropped down the order of priorities. I don't know whether that's the same in Africa. I know it was always a big deal for the Africans to come together. The Nigerian guys coming back to play for the Super Eagles was always a big deal. There was always a really good camaraderie about them. There'd be fallouts. There always are in football teams, aren't there? But you would have to say, with the quality of footballer out there and the level that they're operating, that eventually an African team will win the World Cup. Whether it's in mine and your lifetime, Wally, we're going to have to wait and see. And, we don't have that much time left necessarily, do we?
You can say that, okay. Well, we keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best, really. It's been, the COVID has really been, very destructive to football. Fans are not enjoying, being in the stands to cheer the teams. And do you think that's really affected footballers at the moment? Because I was listening to the commentary today, and there was this very probably valid point made about Sheffield United, saying when they had the fans there cheering them on, it was like a 12th man on the pitch for them. But nowadays, barely anyone in there except for you guys, obviously, getting your stories and reporting and commentating on football. As fans not being at our stadiums, have they really affected football?
I think so. I think it has. I mean, I think you only have to look at some of the results and look at the league table. Some of the teams that probably weren't really fancy to be up there, the likes of Everton, Villa, Southampton, all had really good seasons. And I'm sure, without being unkind to them, they've probably picked up one or two results in one or two places that they perhaps didn't expect to. And it may well be something to do with the fact that they're going to a ground where an away match isn't really an away match because it's everything's on a level. There are no fans to get you over the line or to give you that added edge, that 12th man that you talked about. So we've seen some strange results. I mean, I was at the Aston Villa game against Liverpool a few months back now, wasn't it? When Villa won 7-2, and no one could possibly have predicted that. Now that didn't necessarily have anything to do with no fans being in the ground, but it's one of those freak results that you could never have predicted. And there've been others along the way, not as dramatic. Well, United losing to, was it 6-1 to Arsenal? So there have been some strange results, and I can only put that down to COVID. Tiredness may be a factor as well, in that the teams haven't had much of a rest. They've been playing back-to-back football more or less for a long time. You could say they had a rest during the first sort of lockdown back in March, but they weren't really resting. They were ticking over in preparation for the season starting. So that wasn't really a break at all. Then the season came to an end. Very short turnaround. Was it 4 or 5 weeks, and they were back playing again? No one's fault. It's just the circumstances. And of course we've got to cram the games in just to get the season completed and get the fixtures fulfilled. And that just makes it a very strange season. I mean, it would be, we may see a complete outsider win the league, rather like Leicester did a few years ago. It could be Leicester. It could be they're right up there, and they've got a chance of winning it. But if the obvious suspects are still hovering around, the likes of City and United and Liverpool and I guess Chelsea. But there are other teams that I mentioned, like Everton and Southampton, they're just slightly off the pace. But who knows what's going to happen? It's so unpredictable, and that is down to the pandemic that we're all living through. I'm sure.
Would you say the clubs themselves and the Premier League have obviously done everything they can do to protect the footballers? At some point, we saw footballers probably flouting the COVID rules set by the Premier League and obviously government. Have they really done what they should be doing? The club sides, the Premier League themselves, and the FA.
I think it's very difficult to ask players to not celebrate. I know one or two. Was that humorous incident with James Maddison at Leicester, where he was pretending to sort of cup his ears to the crowd and sort of pretending to shake hands with people, which was very amusing. But there is a serious side to this, and that's obviously public health. And I think the Premier League has worked wonders. I mean, I see close up some of the protocols and the rules that surround distancing. There's various zones that you shouldn't go in, and all the rest of it. And I think we're all just trying to make the best of very difficult circumstances. So I don't think you can point the finger really at players or the league or anything like that. I think we're all just trying to get through and do things as safely as possible.
So obviously you've mentioned the usual suspects that you think they're going to win the league this season. Again, you mentioned Leicester City. Aside that, I know we talk about Spurs at some point. We never know where the league is going to end. Obviously, when Leicester came in all of a sudden with Ranieri and just went and won the league. Do you see any team outside the usual ones that you mentioned probably breaking into that top four and probably giving the likes that you mentioned a run for the money for the league title this season, probably due to, again, COVID, fatigue, and what have you?
I think the difference from when Leicester won back in 2016 this year is that they took I'm not taking anything away from Leicester's win, because it was phenomenal. It was amazing, and it was great fun for all the neutrals. But a lot of the big clubs had dropped off for whatever reason. They weren't at the very best. Tottenham challenged them, didn't they, right to the end, and just lost out at the end. And Leicester were deserved champions, but the following season, if you remember, the big clubs spent big and got serious about trying to win the Premier League back. And so this year is different with COVID because for all the reasons that we talked about just a moment ago. I think Leicester are probably the best placed, certainly, to get into the top four. They finished fifth, didn't they, last season? were disappointed with fifth in the end because they'd been up there for so long and just fell away at the final hurdle. And I think that experience will probably spur them on to go one better. So I think they've got a real chance at the top four. In terms of winning it, I still think Liverpool and Manchester City have the best teams and the best squads. Tottenham are knocking on the door. Chelsea are just trying to find the right formula. Manchester United are coming good. They were impressive, weren't they, today against Liverpool?
Yeah.
So they're back in the mix. I hesitate to say they're as the force that they were, but they've got some really outstanding players. They seem to be coming together as a group. And who knows, if fans are allowed back in before the end of the season, those fans might just push United to another title. So it's all to play for, certainly, but it's more interesting. I'd say it's more interesting with a greater mix of teams competing than the usual suspects, as we called them before. And I think it just makes it more interesting for everybody looking on.
And again, we spoke about Man United, and there's no way you can talk about Man United without mentioning the two names, Paul Pogba. He at sometimes frustrates you, and at sometimes world class.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to stay? Is he staying at Man United?
Who knows?
They're talking, saying, "Oh, Pogba needs to leave, Paul needs to leave," and blah blah blah. Juve wants him back, and what? Is his head really in Man United at the moment? He seems to be playing like he is now. He's rolled up his sleeves to say, "Yeah, I think I'm a Man United player now." So far, do you see him probably leaving at the end of the season, probably going back to Juve or?
I can't understand. I can't understand what's going on. He's clearly a fabulous player. He doesn't always turn it on, but when he does, you can see why they paid the big bucks for him. And he pops up in those key moments in big games when United needs something. He often produces it. Not often enough, perhaps, but he's a big game player quite often. It's those games as a Manchester United fan, he must infuriate you because you can see how good he is, and you're just willing him to deliver on a regular basis. He's starting to do that. He's been very influential in United's resurgence recently. Is he playing in a role that suits him a bit better now with a bit of defensive steel behind him, and he's got some license to get forward, but so has Bruno Fernandes. So between them, they're now they're now playing in their kind of preferred positions, and we're seeing something approaching the best of him. Whether he leaves or goes, I don't have any inside knowledge on that, and it just changes from day to day, doesn't it?
It does, really. And Damian, we were talking about your Nigerian connections. Not a lot of people know this. And I do remember years ago, I wrote an article about you and your Nigerian connections in the newspaper I used to work with back then, The Sun. And have you kept in touch with your Nigerian background? And when was the last time you probably visited the country?
Well, it's to my eternal shame, I've never been to Nigeria.
Wow, I need to take you there now, Damian.
Well, yeah. My father used to say every summer, "Come on, we're going to Nigeria this summer to see my cousins or whatever." And I'd always find a reason not to go, like I'd got a job or a girlfriend or whatever, and I didn't want to spend 4 weeks in overseas and miss the English summer. So I never went. I felt I kind of made up for it a little bit by covering a lot of African nations tournaments, which is where we saw each other. So the nearest I've got is Ghana, which is a reasonably friendly neighbour, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apart from when you play football.
No. Apart from when we play football, no way.
Yes, I spent a really, really enjoyable 5 weeks in Ghana back in 2008 for the African Nations tournament, and travelled around, from Accra to where else did we get to Takoradi, one or two other places, and so that's as near as I've got. And my father, God bless him, is no longer with us, so I'm in touch with I'm in touch with one of his best friends lives in Florida, and he's Nigerian as well. He's a retired doctor, and I speak to him quite regularly, and he's always chastising me, saying, "Why don't you go back home? And you must come back with me." And I mean, he's getting on a bit now. He's well into his 80s, so I'm going to have to do it sooner rather than later.
You definitely have to do it because you need to visit those important places in Nigeria, definitely. And I guess if I remember quite rightly, your dad, your late dad, was from Oyo State.
He was from Yaba province, in
Okay.
Lagos.
Lagos.
Yeah. So he was a Yoruba man. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're a proper Omoiko then.
Is that right?
You know what that, you know what that means, Lagos boy. That's what that means.
All right. Okay.
Omoiko is a Lagos boy.
What's the word again?
Omoiko.
Omoiko. Okay. I remember that. We still eat Nigerian food at home occasionally. So
so what's your favorite Nigerian food?
I can cook jollof rice and okra stew. So
Really?
yeah, we used to have that when I was growing up, and peanut chicken, stuff like that.
Oh,
so still love a bit of Nigerian food every so often.
That's nice, yeah, Damian. Obviously, we look forward to you coming to Nigeria sometime. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. You never know now. Nigeria could probably host another international competition. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
It's been so wonderful talking to you today, Damian. I'm so glad you could join us on the show to talk football.
My pleasure.
For a long time. Hopefully, we catch up again, seeing each other definitely after COVID. But it's wonderful talking to you today, and wishing you all the very best, and obviously wishing her the very best. Hopefully, we see them back in the Premier League at some point.
Well,
in a year or two, not a year, probably in 2 or 3 years.
There might be quite a we keep everything crossed. Yeah. Nice to see you, Wole.
Thanks, Damian. Thanks for coming on the show. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye for now. So that was Damian Johnson, who is Jimmy I've known for a while now. Obviously works so many places. Worked for BBC, Match of the Day, Football Focus. He now works for the Premier League TV. He does quite a lot of work for Premier League TV, reporting specifically on the Premier League. And obviously, they transmit live and obviously recorded programs to all the nations of the world. So it's so nice catching up with Damian, obviously talking about all those players, the Premier League players, especially zeroing in on Nigerian players, who most of which he's probably interviewed in his career as a journalist. And you heard him speak about specifically about Alex Iwobi, who he interviewed a few weeks ago. He did say. That's our show for today. And if you did like the show today and you liked everything we said about the Premier League, try as much as possible to join us next week, while we'll be bringing in someone very important, and obviously someone so we could talk about major issues concerning like we always do here, industry, lifestyle, sports, entertainment. That's what we talk about. That's the way show, really. Special thanks to my friend and colleague who is behind the scene, Yomi, who's ensured that this come to you today. And you can hear me, you can see me, and also like to say special thanks to Abumi Omaho, who obviously established my contact with Damian Johnson. So we're able to bring him to this program today. Thank you for watching the show, and I do hope you have a wonderful week ahead. And like I always say here, please do whatever you do, try as much as possible to stay safe. Okay, we're still in the COVID-19 era. All right, do stay safe whenever you go out. Make sure you got your mask on. Don't forget to wash your hands, and always keep the distance. All right. Stay safe. So to next week. My name remains Wole and The Way Show. Please don't forget, always subscribe to this show. Subscribe to the show if you like what we're doing. Subscribe to the show, and obviously tell your friends, tell your families about this show, and please please have a look at our previous editions, including this one you're watching just now, and like it. Okay. Next week is another day. My name remains Wole. You have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you. Good night.